Okay, this is the part 2 of the chapter 23 practice tests that we're going to go through. So we've already gone through this question, so I'll just skip it. And this question too. Okay, so consider the basic ADAS model. If there is a decrease in the cost of non-labor inputs to production, the result will be. So, talking about inputs to production. So clearly this has nothing to do with the demand side of the economy. This is all about supply. Talking about the aggregate supply is talking about the price of your inputs, right? And the price of your inputs went down. What does that mean? If you can pay workers less, then you're going to want them to produce more, right? So how do they produce more? Well, let's graph that. So this is our ADAS model. Aggregate demand sloping downwards and aggregate supply sloping upwards. So this is our price level and this is our Y, and this is our Y star. Remembering that Y is equivalent to saying output. So there is a decrease in the cost of non-labor inputs to production. What that means is we can produce more at a given price level. So if this is our price level, we can say now we can produce more. What that means is our AS curve has shifted to the right, because now this is our old level of output. Sorry, I don't know why this is so slanted, but this is our old level of output, and hello. And this is our new level of output. I don't know why it's not letting me change colors here, but anyways, this is our new level. Actually, it's even higher at the given level, price level. It's all the way over here. This is our new equilibrium. This is our new equilibrium. And this is our new level of output at that given price level. So we're currently in an inflationary gap, and our AS curve has shifted to the right. We talked about this one. Okay, consider two economies, A and B. Economy A has a marginal propensity, and then it gives you a bunch of numbers, right? So let's talk about those bunch numbers. You might not know, but there is a formula that we use for those bunch of numbers. So there's two. We're going to talk about the marginal propensity to consume, which is given to us. But that's not what we want here, because when we're calculating the multiplier, we want the marginal propensity to spend. And the marginal propensity to spend, sometimes written as MPS, although be careful because that could be marginal propensity to save. So to spend, though, is written with a Z. And the formula for that is marginal propensity to consume times 1 minus T minus the marginal propensity to import. And then how we get the multiplier is we do 1 over 1 minus Z. So, if you just literally plug those numbers in, the question gives you all the numbers, plug it in, economy A, you're going to get your marginal propensity to spend is 0.71. Plugging that into the multiplier equation, you get this. Same thing for B. We notice that our multiplier in A is a lot bigger than it is in B. What that means is our multiplier tracks shifts in aggregate expenditure. So when we have a shift, the multiplier shows how big the shift actually is. For instance, if we increase government purchases by 100, it's probably going to have a greater effect on our economy than just 100. In the case of economy A, it's going to have an effect of 340. Whether that's dollars, whether that's millions of dollars, whatever. The point is, it's going to have a greater effect on GDP. It's not going to increase GDP by 100, it's going to increase it by 340. In economy B, it's not just going to increase it by 100, it's going to increase it by 140. That's what the multiplier is saying. The multiplier is saying that the money, it goes through the system and it gets reused more than once, and that's how it works. So we know that our aggregate expenditure function is related to our aggregate demand function. And what this is saying, the second part of the question here says, suppose there is a decrease in autonomous investment. So we know what our AE formula is. It's C plus I plus G plus NX. So if our I goes down, notice this is a plus. That means that these two things are positively related. So if one goes up, the other goes up, and if the other goes down, this one goes down too. So if our I goes down, our AE goes down. Now, what did we just talk about? We said when something happens, there is a greater effect than just what it initially says. So here it says 5 billion. It doesn't actually matter what the number is. We just need to know that there's a decrease. And we want to know which one does it affect greater. So obviously, just looking at the multiplier, A has a greater multiplier. That means that a decrease is going to shift our aggregate expenditure function down by more. So our AE is going to go down, and that makes our aggregate demand curve shift to the left. And it's going to happen in a greater amount in A because it has a larger multiplier. So the correct answer here is the AD curve shifts farther to the left in economy A than economy B. So I'll talk about some of the wrong answers here because people sometimes get confused. Simple multiplier is larger in B. That's just false if you look at it, if you use the formula properly. The AD curve shifts the same amount, also false if you use the multiplier. The AD curve shifts right the same, well, the multiplier is different, so it's never going to shift by the same amount. And then the AD curve shifts farther to the right in economy A. So that would be if you're thinking that a decrease in investment would increase aggregate expenditure, which is also not true. They're positively related. Next question. Which of the following would likely cause an upward parallel shift in the AE curve and a rightward shift in the AD curve? So a lot of these things shift the AE curve, but they don't actually affect the AD curve. Like price level, remember that our AE curve, we have a different one for every price level, but we only have one for every price level in for AD, because our AD curve looks like this, and it maps all the given price levels for GDP. So at this price level, that's our GDP, and at this price level, that's our GDP, etc. So a shift in price level won't move this curve at all. So it's not D. Then it says a reduction in government purchases. So going back up to our formula here, look at the sign on G. It's also a plus. That means that the relationship with that is positively related. So if there was a reduction in government purchases, we would see AE go down and aggregate demand, go left. So it's also not a reduction. That wouldn't cause a rightward shift or an upward shift of the AE curve. Then an increase in the marginal propensity to consume. So the marginal propensity to consume makes up part of our Z value here, which is our slope of our AE function. Our AE function has Z as the slope. So what that means is that if we change the slope, we aren't going to see an upward parallel shift, as it says right here in the question, upward parallel shift. We're going to see a rotation, and we're not really sure what that's going to do to AE. So it is not this. And then a decrease in the price level. So a decrease in the price level would increase aggregate expenditure. We would see an increase in consumption, and we'd see an increase in exports as well. What it wouldn't do is change this curve at all, because this is for every price level. So we wouldn't see any change in the AD curve. So for that reason, it has to be an increase in the business confidence of firms. That would likely be shown as an increase in investment. An increase in investment is, again, positively related to our AE function. So when AE goes up, or when I goes up, AE goes up, which would give us a parallel upward shift, because investment is autonomous. Let's talk about what that means. So any variable that is autonomous and changes is going to give us, autonomous changes will give us parallel shifts. Okay? And then any of the variables that affect this equation over here are going to give us rotations. All right, rotate our AE function. So that's going to give us a parallel shift. Investment and AE are positively related. So if there was an increase in business confidence, an increase in investment, that would give us an increase in AE, which would give us a rightward shift in AD. Consider, we did this one already. Next. I got this wrong just because I was going through them really quickly, but the concept is fairly easy, so I can explain it quick. So, looking at our, how do I, oh, okay, that works. I need a, cool. So, let's, can I, nice. Okay. So, let's draw our ADAS model. ADAS model. This is our potential output. It's always good to label your axes just so you don't forget, right? And then what it says here, so this is our potential output, and it's not at potential output. It's not at potential output. So I'll erase this. That would be if it was in long run equilibrium. It's not, that's fine. So what it's instead going, what it looks like in this one is it's over here. So I talked about this in the last video, but when our short run equilibrium, so this is our short run equilibrium when demand equals supply, that's pretty basic for micro, everyone should know that, is greater than our potential output, we are in an inflationary gap, and the amount that we're in is simply the difference between the equilibrium and potential output. So the difference between D and A in this case, which is just 200. And then how do we fix that? So I talked about how in the long run, without any government intervention, what we're going to see is an aggregate supply shift to here. That's because there's going to be an upward pressure on wages. Everyone's going to want raises because the economy is booming. They're producing so much. What that's going to do is employers are say, okay, we'll pay you more, but now we can't hire as many of you, and our AIS curve is going to shift to the left. That's if the government does nothing. If the government does something, what they would want to do in this case is called fiscal, because they create fiscal policy, fiscal contraction. They want to get us out of the inflationary gap. The opposite, if we were in a recessionary gap, it would be called fiscal easing or loosening, or what other word do they use here? Expansion. Any of those words would be fine. So fiscal contraction, how are we going to reduce our level of output? Well, there's two ways that they can do it. They can raise taxes. They can raise T, or they can reduce G. Both of those, just in our formula, AE equals C plus I plus G plus NX. Now remember, our C is built up of two things. It's built up of our autonomous consumption, our little c that we do no matter what, plus our YD, our disposable income. And our disposable income is really just our income minus taxes. So if we raised taxes, what's that going to mean? It's going to mean that our YD gets smaller, our YD goes down, which makes our C go down, and this is positively related. So if our C goes down, our AE function is also going to go down. When AE goes down, AD goes left. AD goes left. So the only time that we're going to see aggregate demand shift in a reaction to a recessionary gap or an inflationary gap is when there is fiscal policy. So in this case, our aggregate demand function is actually going to shift back here, AD2, to bring us back to long run equilibrium. So that's raising taxes. Reducing government, exact same thing. These two are positively related. So it's going to go down and shift to the left. So that's fiscal contraction, and that's how we'd bring us back to long run equilibrium in the event of an inflationary gap. Next question. Okay, I don't think I talked about this. It's the same graph, but a different question. So, assume the economy is initially in equilibrium with desired aggregate expenditure equal to real GDP at point V, right up here. Then it says the price level is P0. Good to know. So we're at any of these curves, but dragging down from point V, we know we're at AD0. Excuse me. Because Y0 and Y0, like you can match them up, right? Now suppose the AE curve shifts to AE1. So it decreases. So that means we're going to have a new equilibrium at point U. And we move to a new equilibrium level of GDP at Y1, at point F on AD1. So notice we're on a new AD curve. What does that mean? That means it couldn't have been a change in price that caused this shift. Couldn't have been a change in price, because then we wouldn't shift curves. So right now we're at point F right here. So we notice that our AD curve shifted down, and it wasn't an increase in the price level. Because normally, when prices go down, we see AE go up, right? If our stuff costs less, we're going to buy more, and vice versa. So price level didn't change in this case, because that we see no change in AD. So there was no change in AD. That's a terrible A. Perfect. So it wasn't that. So what else can cause a decrease in the aggregate expenditure function? I don't need to write out the formula again. We can just look at it. So all of these variables, all of them are positively related. So if any of them went down, that would cause a decrease in the AE function, right? So now we just have to look for one that goes down. This says an increase, no good. Fall in price level, we talked about that. An increase, no good. Rise in the price level doesn't affect it. So a decrease in desired net exports. One of our positively related variables went down. That's that for that question. This question, same thing twice. That's it.